Hi everyone, my name is Yann Moreau. I am a graphic designer and also a copywriter. The study I'm going to present you is a teamwork with my great friend François Carré. François is a scholar in history and a librarian. In early 2020, just before the pandemic, the Gilets jaunes protests were the breaking news in France. François and I started to question the social and political situation. We wondered why it's so hard for the so-called democracies to face efficiently major issues such as the ecological crisis. Why do peoples let governments maintain the status quo? We came to think that one of the multiple reasons is that most people's visualization of the political issues is both biased and outdated. Especially the left-right representation is biased, as it is impossible to oppose the center without getting towards the extremes. We wanted to offer a more accurate and up-to-date visualization of political currents and stakes, and this led us to our study of paradigms. A paradigm is a system which articulates the different movements of the philosophical, spiritual, and political thought of a society at a certain time, in a set of stakes, concerns, and approaches that define a general spirit. The different currents position themselves according to the central founding values of the paradigm. They propose ideas and political systems that diverge or oppose each other, but which constitute a convergent relationship to the world in the recognition of the same antagonisms.
Here is the general structure of a paradigm. There are three major currents of thought which, together, combine and recompose over the course of history. The current paradigm is humanism. It began with the liberal revolutions in France and the United States at the end of the 18th century, and with the first industrial revolution in the West. A paradigm carries in its conservative tendency the entire previous paradigm, rooted in what has already been achieved. Humanist conservatism inherited from monotheism the idea that all humans are equal in the eye of a single God. Its central value is union, the need to unite as society, family, homeland, community. Collective union is maintained by a clear pecking order, abundance and security, and powerful religious institutions. The idea that every human being possesses a share of the divine has developed within the monotheistic paradigm. This idea inspired the philosophy of enlightenment, universalism, and human rights. It placed freedom as the central value of humanism. Freed from the authority of God, humans have been able to question the universe through science. This led to the technological rise of industrial revolutions. Liberalism leads to a rule of law which protects the integrity of the individual. Its economic facet is capitalism. Ultraliberalism is a radical individualist form where the role of the state is reduced in the name of individual freedom and which favors the rise of aristocratic classes. Socialist thought is a collectivist alternative. To balance liberal individualism and the conservative hierarchy, the key value of socialism is equality. It demands the sharing of the wealth generated by capitalist productivism through a welfare state controlled by the people. Communism is its radical form where everything becomes common, where workers have collective power, and where social classes must disappear. In line with capitalism, liberalism associated with conservatism advocates meritocracy and elitism and favors distinct hierarchical social classes, of which caste-based society is the radical form. Conservatism combined with socialism forms populism, which opposes liberal universalism, deregulation, and globalization in the name of common interests. Right-wing populisms are more attached to the identity of peoples or communities, and left-wing populisms to social justice. Radical populisms are reactionary ideologies. Liberalism associated with socialism forms social democracy, universalist and egalitarian. It is the progressive access whose radical forms are libertarianism, anarchism, and utopian models. The progressive axis carries the seeds of the following paradigm through the quest for a widening of emancipation. Emancipation is the historical thread that shifts paradigms. One can assess the evolution of emancipation by examining, for example, the way in which societies deal with the issue of slavery in all its forms. When the founding ideology of a paradigm stifles emancipation, it becomes conservatism and leads to the recomposition and mutation of other currents of thought. Today, social inequalities are considerable, and limiting emancipation exclusively to human beings endangers the ecosystem. Liberal humanism meets its individualistic paradox in anthropocentrism. Humanity is about to switch to a paradigm whose dominant thought is collectivism, including the ecosystem, eco-socialism. Anthropocentrist thought, capitalism, and industrial technologies are becoming the new conservatism. Techno-humanism is the rooting value that will make it possible to develop an ecological science and to structure the social order in service of the ecosystem. The radical form of this new conservatism is the belief that salvation is not linked to safeguarding the environment, that human beings can continue to freely dispose of the world through their sciences. The dominant thought of the new paradigm will have the world as its central value, seen as the new community of interdependence rather than just humanity. Interdependence with the ecosystem would logically be associated with socialism to ensure social justice. Radical eco-socialism could take several forms, possibly associated: economic slowdown to the point of technological regression, ecological communism, or a religion worshipping the soul of the planet. In response to the new dominant collectivist thought, a new alternative way of thinking will develop, one which will also go beyond anthropocentrism. We believe that this thought will be individualistic and consider emancipation in the exploration of consciousness. The radical form of conscientism could be evolutionary or a messianism of singularity, awaiting the birth of an artificial consciousness. Eco-socialism combined with techno-humanism would lead to new academic thinking, wherein industrial technology would be employed for ecological purposes and to maintain social equality. In its radical form, this movement would be totalitarianism, an ecological dictatorship where freedom would be reduced and individuals would be controlled by industry. This is probably the dream of many billionaire capitalists that we commonly see in dystopian fictions. Techno-humanism associated with conscientist alternative thought would translate into an anthropocentric expansionism that we are already seeing manifesting itself in many projects: eugenics, space conquest, cybernetism, and the quest for immortality. The radical form of this reaction to eco-socialism would be transhumanist elitism, which is already a powerful current of thought because its leaders are found in the capitalist multinationals. Eco-socialism associated with conscientism would form the new progressivism. Emancipation would be extended to the non-human world in a universalism of consciousness. Similar thoughts already exist, such as anti-speciesism, posthumanism, neo-paganism. The radical movements of this progressivism would be evolutions of anarchy, such as Dadaism or tribal societies, which would develop in response to the lack of resources and to climate change. It is impossible today to forecast how long the next paradigm will last and what events will, in turn, tip it into the next paradigm. Everything in its own time, for we are still partially in the humanist paradigm. But we can already imagine that eco-socialism will meet its paradox in a collectivist dogmatism, which will make it incapable of supporting the extension of individual consciousness.
Thank you for watching.